Hello, glad you can join us. Here's what's happening this Wednesday. Canada moves to safeguard the country's vulnerable steel industry.
Canadian steel for Canadian projects.
Cracking down to address those crushing U.S. tariffs.
Leave Brampton. Otherwise, my wife, my son, and myself would be killed.
A politician's alarm over an alleged death threat.
We do have an aircraft that has been hijacked. Is in the vicinity of the airport.
Plus, the mad scramble behind the scenes.
CTV National News with Sandy Ronaldo.
The Prime Minister had a message for Canada's steel industry today in Hamilton, the heart of Ontario steel country. In this unpredictable new trade world, Mark Carney said, we have to change the way we do things and we will be our own best customers. He then went on to introduce new measures to support the sector. CTV's Heather Wright is in Hamilton to take us through the key points announced today and the reaction. Hi, Heather.
Well, Sandy, the Prime Minister's message today was bolster and protect. Bolster the steel industry by growing the domestic market and protect by reducing the amount of foreign steel allowed into Canada. This Hamilton, Ontario steel fabricator has been in business for 70 years and had been sending nearly 70% of its products south of the border. Now that number is close to zero.
This is Steel Town for a reason.
Today, the Prime Minister was in Hamilton announcing measures to help Canada's steel industry. By the end of the month, Ottawa will tighten the quota for steel coming from countries without a free trade agreement like China and Turkey to half of 2024 levels. Anything beyond that will face a tariff of 50%. This measure is aimed at reducing foreign steel that has flooded the Canadian market, much of it diverted here after the United States imposed tariffs on the global steel industry in March. And with Canadian steel producers effectively shut out of the U.S., Mark Carney says this will help them sell their products domestically.
For Canada to build big things fast, we need our steel industry to advance, not retreat.
As Canada embarks on massive infrastructure spending, the Prime Minister also announced that any companies bidding on government projects will have to use Canadian steel.
We will change the federal government's procurement process to require companies contracting with the federal government to source Canadian steel for government contracts.
The tightened quota and increased support for laid-off workers announced today come after the steel industry said measures announced last month didn't go far enough.
We got things going on south of the border. We can't control all of that. But what we can control is here in Canada. Let's make Canada the best.
Asked about ongoing trade negotiations with the United States, the Prime Minister would not say what level of tariffs Canada would accept, nor would he say whether Canada would impose additional retaliatory tariffs. He said both were good questions, but said answering them in the midst of trade talks would be a bad response.
All right.
Sandy.
Okay, CTV's Heather Wright. Now let's bring in CTV Chief Financial Correspondent Amanda Lang. Amanda, bottom line here, does today's announcement from the Prime Minister do enough to soften the blow of tariffs for the steel industry?
Unfortunately, the answer, Sandy, is yes and no. The steel industry is happy, obviously, with the support that it's getting, including money for displaced workers. This is all good. It also likes the long-term benefits of a buy Canadian mentality. It does not change the fact that the industry's been decimated by the tariffs that are still in place. 50% tariffs for the next 6 months could be, and that is something that the industry has found crippling, Sandy. What they were saying to me today is, we need a deal. It's all very well to have these kind of countervailing tariffs and buy Canadian mentality. Let's get a trade deal done. Even if the tariffs in that deal are in place but lower, it's better than what we've got today.
Okay, now the other thing, Amanda, Ottawa is targeting non-U.S. countries like China with tariffs on steel imports. How do you think that might go over with those countries?
Well, it might be hard with some of our trading partners like Turkey. In terms of the Chinese measures, Sandy, we're going further even than the U.S. does in trying to keep cheaper Chinese steel out of the market. China's a bad actor. Everybody agrees because they sell their steel sometimes below the cost of production. It's called dumping. It is bad for business. We are taking tough measures against it. The industry really likes that, Sandy. It might take a while to figure out the country of origin labeling on this, but it's good news. It's probably here to stay, and it will actually bode well for us at the negotiation table with the U.S. around a trade agreement.
All right, Amanda, as always, thanks so much for this.
Thanks.
Okay. Now, Canada's auto industry is already feeling the pain of the trade war. As we know, the sector also anticipating lost investments in the billions over the next year. Now, this information comes to us from the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, which is offering some recommendations. CTV's Adrian Gobriel now on why it's not just the big auto giants feeling the pinch. Adrian.
Sandy, here inside this auto parts shop, these aftermarket brake pads from China cost about $20 to $30. Now, these ones are made in America, and they cost up to $80 each. The price skyrocketing since the trade war with the United States began.
We're selling it for like 40% more just because it's cost so much to get, right? And there's less in stock because people aren't buying this.
Inside Toronto's Pro Auto Parts manager Moshe Bouchard says the tariffs have hit hard.
You have to make deals with new people, new suppliers, and just researching, and during that time, you don't have inventory.
The Canadian Federation of Independent Business surveyed 187 small to medium-sized auto companies and found that revenues have declined by an average of 13%.
High W40 engine oil?
For Pro Auto Parts, it's not just the spike in prices from the U.S. hurting their bottom line. There's also a lack of inventory on the market. These shelves have been empty for weeks.
And when we do find it, it's overpriced. That burden is shared onto the consumers who already don't have that much money in their pockets.
The CFIB claims that provincial programs set up to help the auto sector in Ontario will provide little help to small and medium-sized businesses.
No one wants to invest in their business when they don't know what's going to go on in the future, right? It's why we're seeing, paused hiring, paused investment, and revenue losses. And so that's why we need the government to create that certainty.
Finding an off-ramp from the U.S. tariffs is proving to be a challenge. With an August 1st trade deadline for a deal looming, those negotiating on Canada's behalf are trying to leverage our long-standing relationship and natural resources.
Copper, lithium, graphite. We do have better leverage than others, but again, it's like dealing with the mob bus right now. So the law doesn't matter, leverage does.
There are parts made for some of the large car manufacturers which are CUSMA compliant, meaning no tariff. Though many of these aftermarket items like this are slapped with 25%, part of the Canadian government's counter-tariff measures. Sandy.
Adrian, thank you. Well, we learned today that NORAD scrambled U.S. fighter jets to Vancouver airport after a small plane was stolen in Victoria yesterday by a man claiming it was a hijacking. CF-18 Hornets were also dispatched. The incident had air traffic controllers grounding flights and aborting landings. Audio recordings reveal exactly what they were dealing with. CTV's BC Bureau Chief Andrew Johnson has been listening to the recordings. All right, Andrew, paint a picture for us.
Sandy, they are trained to keep their cool under any circumstances, and that comes through in the recordings of air traffic controllers dealing with an unfolding crisis.
We do have an aircraft that has been hijacked, is in the vicinity of the airport.
With a small plane that took off from Victoria, circling Vancouver International Airport at low altitude, no one knew what could happen next.
Yeah, there's a little Cessna orbiting the airport, trying to stop everyone from going flying for some reason.
It all started at the Victoria Flying Club Tuesday, where sources confirm a man had booked a Cessna tour. Sometime before takeoff, the man threatened the pilot with a knife, then stole the plane and headed for YVR.
Vancouver is a major international airport, and so nobody knew whether the person had nefarious intent and intended to hurt themselves or to crash into somewhere on the Vancouver airport.
According to sources, the man piloting the plane indicated his intention was to shut down the airspace for hours to bring attention to the climate crisis. Flights in and out of YVR were grounded while air traffic controllers worked to send incoming planes somewhere else.
Vancouver's first line of duty is to protect any other aircraft coming into the field, which they did. They diverted 9 flights as far away as Calgary and Seattle.
The pilot landed 35 minutes later and was arrested on the runway. He was the only person on board. RCMP have not identified the suspect or potential charges. Sandy.
All right, Andrew, thank you. The search for 2 Nova Scotia children missing for more than 2 months is still actively being investigated by the RCMP, with thousands of video files under review. Police say they're also looking at more than 600 tips and examining evidence found during the search, including a pink blanket. 6-year-old Lily and 4-year-old Jack Sullivan were reported missing on May the 2nd. The mayor of Brampton, Ontario, Patrick Brown, has gone public over alleged death threats, singling him out along with his family. Police have arrested and charged a man. Intelligence reports say there has been an increase in vitriol directed at politicians. CTV's Sean Leathon now on the risks that come with being a public figure. Sean.
Sandy, according to Peel Regional Police, the person who is alleged to have uttered this threat lives locally, and they're believed to have acted alone. But given some of the evidence in their investigation and some of the statements by Mayor Patrick Brown, they thought it important to look outside of Canada.
A threat made to Brampton Mayor Patrick Brown in late June has resulted in a 29-year-old man being arrested.
I was told to leave my position, leave Brampton. Otherwise, my wife, my son, and myself would be killed.
Peel police arrested 29-year-old Kanwarjot Singh Manoria of Brampton yesterday. He's charged with utter threats to cause death or bodily harm. The threat came electronically in late June, with Peel police providing Brown with protection while they investigated.
I think part of the apprehension initially, some of the concern from police initially was the fact that this was on the heels of some positions that I took on transnational crime.
Brown has been vocal in advocating that the Bishnoi crime group out of India be considered a terrorist organization. This, as many South Asian business owners in Ontario and across Canada have been subjected to extortion threats and shootings, something the RCMP have acknowledged.
I mentioned previously the Lawrence Bishnoi gang that's involved in extortions and narcotics originating from India.
While Bishnoi himself is behind bars in India, Canadian officials have confirmed he's still running the operation. At a separate event yesterday, Peel Police Deputy Chief Nick Milanovic spoke about the need for caution.
And certainly in Mayor Brown's case, when you look at his public position on community safety and the stances that he's taken, particularly along some of those foreign groups that you're referencing, it's something that absolutely has to be considered.
Police are saying they believe Manoria acted alone, but according to Brown, had initially claimed to be from an international crime network, and the message came through a computer server in Sweden.
Currently, right now, I do not believe that it's from outside of Canada.
Or an organized crime.
Or an organized crime group.
Brown saying he never felt worried thanks to Peel Police, but learning of the arrest last night was helpful.
The fact that my family can sleep a little bit easier tonight is good news.
Peel Police have said that Manoria is in custody pending a bail hearing. Sandy.
Sean, thank you for this. A group of First Nations is fine-tuning expectations ahead of a key meeting with the Prime Minister. They are unhappy about controversial legislation they say fast-tracks infrastructure projects without their consent or involvement. CTV's Rachel Aiello is in Gatineau to set the scene for us. All right, Rachel, what's happening?
Sandy, I'm at the Museum of History, where the Prime Minister will convene a full-day summit with First Nations chiefs and organizations tomorrow in hopes of easing their concerns about his contentious major projects law. But today, some First Nations leaders are questioning whether Mark Carney is simply checking a box or is ready to meaningfully engage. First Nations leaders set expectations today for tomorrow's big gathering in Gatineau.
This is not consultation. This is a first meeting of many. This discussion will be led by us.
The Prime Minister organized the meeting to discuss the implementation of Bill C-5 after Indigenous stakeholders felt their rights were not respected in the rush to pass it through Parliament. They now want Carney to listen.
We're going to give him the benefit of the doubt that he produces tomorrow.
I'm a bit more cynical. I do agree. I mean, just look at the process.
9 Ontario First Nations, though, aren't waiting, launching a legal challenge to the federal law and a similar provincial plan to try and prevent both governments from using their new powers to sidestep existing protections.
These bills from Ontario and Canada show that the Crown has no interest in reconciliation.
Today, Carney was asked,
have your belated consultations jeopardized the goal of getting new projects built?
Well, first, no.
He went on to say tomorrow's talks are about engaging on how to work together in the future.
What are the priorities? That's before any consultation on any specific project.
The Ontario government is also consulting First Nations this summer, with Premier Doug Ford's office promising to build consensus around projects that support prosperity. And Carney has plans to have additional conversations with Inuit and Métis leaders in the coming weeks. Sandy?
CTV's Rachel Aiello. U.S. President Donald Trump is lashing out at what he calls past supporters over persistent questions about the so-called Epstein files.
It's all been a big hoax. It's perpetrated by the Democrats, and some stupid Republicans and foolish Republicans fall into the net.
Trump is referring to a long-rumored list of the convicted sex offenders' clients. There is growing discontent among Trump supporters over the president's about-face on the Jeffrey Epstein files. In a social media rant, Trump referred to those supporters as weaklings. And a tense moment caught on camera as Israel launched airstrikes inside Syria. A reporter from Al Jazeera was on the air when a strike hit the building behind him. Israel launched powerful airstrikes at Damascus, hitting near the presidential palace and damaging the defense ministry. The attacks marked an escalation in a campaign Israel says is intended to push militants away from its border and protect the Druze religious minority. CTV National News will be right back. Thousands are still out of their homes in Manitoba because of wildfires. But today we focus on a fire in Newfoundland's Bonavista Peninsula, burning out of control and threatening several communities near Chance Harbour. Residents in the area are nervously watching the weather. CTV's Garrett Barry has more.
Heat and wind have been a thorn in the side of firefighters on the Bonavista Peninsula. It's been making the behavior of the Chance Harbour fire harder to predict and making it still too risky to put boots on the ground in some areas.
It's been emotional for everyone the last few days, but when I seen those water bombers pitch in our bay this morning, like the gratitude that we all hold for them is just, you just can't really put it into words.
I don't know if my heart could be more grateful right now.
For Courtney Russell, these past 2 days have been a roller coaster, as her and her neighbors in the small town of Winterbrook have been warned it's possible that these fire suppression efforts might falter, and her and her neighbors might have to evacuate. Further out the bay, in remote cabin areas on the peninsula, devastation. Ryan Pitts has been taking trips to see his family's cabins in the Chance Cove area. He estimates there's 30 buildings burned down around the region, including almost all of them near Pudding Cove.
If everyone was down on a weekend, it was packed, it'd be lit up from one side to the other, like a little community. Now, as of today, there's one little tiny cabin left there.
Forestry officials said this afternoon that crews have been able to stop any further growth in the fire today. Winds are expected to switch tonight, and that should give firefighters a bit of a helping hand. Sandy.
Okay, Garrett, thank you. Well, groundbreaking Canadian tennis star Eugenie Bouchard is set to call it a career after the National Bank Open in her hometown of Montreal. Bouchard reached number 5 in the world in 2014 when she claimed 1 singles title and reached the Wimbledon final, becoming the first Canadian woman to play in a Grand Slam final in the Open era. More news coming up after this break. As Canadians face a housing affordability challenge, there's some welcome news on the number of new homes being built. National housing starts have increased 3.6% in the first 6 months of the year compared to 2024. But the situation varied in Canada's biggest cities. Vancouver saw a huge increase driven by multi-unit starts, while both Toronto and Montreal are building fewer homes year over year. Now, when it comes to a building boom, Canada's smallest province is delivering big results. But as CTV's Maria Saru reports, there's some strain behind the surge in PEI. Maria.
Sandy, behind me, construction crews are busy building, but they can't keep up with population growth and demand, a problem seen across the country that's particularly pronounced here in PEI. From the foundation below to the hammers swinging above, every piece plays a part. Construction crews are helping build PEI's economy from the ground up, contributing $580 million to the GDP in 2024.
That's a big chunk of change here in little old PEI. Construction has never been in this much demand ever before in the history of construction, not only in PEI, but right across Canada.
The island's economy grew by 3.6% last year. That's higher than any other province and more than double the national rate of 1.6%. Development and construction were major drivers, with new homes, schools, clinics, and businesses popping up. But rapid population growth is pushing demand and adding pressure. Between 2020 to 2024, PEI gained more than 22,000 residents, outpacing the last 20 years combined. Here in Stratford, one of PEI's fastest growing municipalities, new homes are being built quickly, but not quickly enough to fix the province's housing shortage. Industry leaders say more people aren't the problem. They can be the solution.
Money's never going to fix this problem. It's skilled people and skilled people only.
Across Atlantic Canada, an aging workforce and shortage of tradespeople are driving labor gaps in key sectors. That could get worse with recent federal cuts to immigration streams, according to economic experts.
Anything that we can do to bring young people into Canada to help support those industries will help us in the long run.
The Construction Association of PEI is training students in the trades and stepping up international recruitment. Builders and experts here hope more help is on the way, but until then, the race to keep up with PEI's growth continues. Sandy?
All right, Maria, thank you. After the break, a sizzling hot hockey rivalry. The Buffalo Sabres roast some Canadian teams, and we'll tell you which ones when we come back. The NHL released its schedule today for the next season, and as part of a saucy social media stunt, the Buffalo Sabres took some shots that hit a few Canadian teams hard. The city that created the Buffalo Wings assigned each of their opponents a flavor. Now, some got off easy, like Calgary is flamin' hot, Montreal's wing is a steamy, like the hot dog, and the Winnipeg Jets were an airplane wing. But Ottawa was just listed as plain, apparently a dig at the city lacking flavor. For what it's worth, Ottawa released a video of its mascot shooting buffalo wings at a mannequin, so no love lost there. But the most scathing flavor was saved for Toronto, described as a choking hazard over the Leafs' playoff performances. Well, maybe this is a good time to remind everyone that Buffalo hasn't made the playoffs in 14 years. And on that note, thank you for sharing your time with us. I'm Sandy Ronaldo. Your local CTV News is coming up. We'll see you tomorrow, we hope. Bye for now.